Hey guys, welcome back to Tribe of Unicorns. I'm your host, Kendra Beavis, and today I am talking to Lisa Zawrotny. She is a productivity coach and does things very differently. Usually when you hear that word productivity, your eyes roll. Everybody has some sort of system or method, but Lisa really focuses on compassionate productivity, shame-free productivity. We always have this idea that we're supposed to be busy all the time and our to-do list is miles long. It never gets done. It's completely unrealistic. And even when we do take the time to give ourselves a break, the shame that we feel is pretty heavy. Let's talk about why the hustle culture that we've been brought up in no longer serves us and what we can do instead, how we can create systems that honor how we need to feel, honor our energy, honor our lifestyles. All right, you ready to get into it? Let's go. Hey, Lisa, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Tribe of Unicorns. It's so nice to have you here.
Thank you, Kendra. I'm so happy to be here.
Can you share with us where in the world you are?
I am in New York State, and I am in what I call Finger Lakes adjacent. So most people think I'm upstate, and I consider it more overstate. So if you're looking at a map of New York and you look for, most people know where Rochester, Syracuse, Buffalo is, but I want you to go down a little bit and look for the lakes that actually look like fingers. It is the most beautiful country, wineries, breweries, just the best place to hang out. It's got an amazing music scene, which is really important to our family. And we're loving it out here. And today, as you and I are recording this, we are enjoying a snow day. And I say enjoying because I get to be inside talking to you.
So can you share with us what it actually is that you do? So I know productivity, but specifically, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, and that's a great question because when we think of productivity, we think about doing more and getting things done. And I think that there's this concept or this idea threaded through our culture and our society that is really about hustling and grinding. And I'm not that. I am something else entirely. So I'm trying to come up with words for it. And I've used the term compassionate productivity fairly successfully, at the very least, to get people to say, I'm sorry, what now?
It's a scroll stopper.
Exactly. And for my own podcast, the idea is to have conversations surrounding shame-free productivity.
Can you describe that more? What is that shame-free productivity?
Yeah, and I'd love to know what that means for you when you hear those words. But I'll say this, and it's been for me personally. I've had these experiences, but I've also seen it with client after client after client. And so I know that this is a thing where we are trying to get stuff done and we are trying to be productive, right? That's the end goal. And that is a good thing inherently. But I find that the way we are driven to do it, with that hustle and grind, with a lack of understanding of what it means for us, with a lack of intentionality or purpose, and a push that is so hard that what we end up with is burnout instead of results. That keeps constantly happening, that kind of misunderstanding. Productivity where we feel like we're never enough. We're not doing enough. It's always that enoughness that's in question, even when we are giving it all we have, every single moment. It's that productivity where we feel as though every moment needs to be filled, and yet there's still more to do, and somehow that's on us. I want to release that guilt and that shame. Shame-free productivity is feeling like, look at me go, like that feeling of satisfaction. Yeah, we still want to achieve goals. We still want to be successful. We still want to do the things. We still want to check the stuff off the list, but we want to do it in a way that honors us and our needs and feels satisfying and not just draining.
Yeah, because at least, in my experience, there's always a running list of the things that you want to get done in every area of your life. And, I'll come to the end of a day and my husband will be like, oh, how was your day? And I got a lot done, but there's so much more. When you're talking about filling all the spaces, when I'm not doing something productive, air quotes, it does feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not checking boxes off the list. However, the last couple years, I've realized that those empty spaces are so necessary to be more productive. Because otherwise, you're right, you hit this burnout space. I could sit there and I could look at that list. And by the end of the day, I really haven't checked off anything because I'm just so in my head and spinning without having that nurturing space for myself. So that's been a lesson I've learned the hard way. and been trying to achieve over the last couple years.
Well, that
So,
lesson is my soapbox pretty much. So it's an
yeah.
important one. Yeah.
How did you come to this? I mean, have you experienced burnout yourself?
Oh, yes, very much so. Whatever we're talking about, I have been there. And a big part of that, what I refer to as my origin story, if you will, I've had a lot of, challenging, very busy points in my life, right? Different things that have happened, but the one that shook me to my core and completely changed the game for me was being a caregiver for my mom. And I did this during a time that I was pregnant and I have 2 kiddos. She had Alzheimer's, and for 5 years, I cared for her, had 2 pregnancies. So at one point, I had an infant, a toddler, and a mom with Alzheimer's. And I say this to you, and I'm like, I don't even know how I managed to do that. And that's the thing about these moments in our lives is that we come across them and we find a way. But it left me pretty broken in many, many ways, emotionally and physically, just trying to figure out what's next. And thankfully, there was this moment as I was taking stock of everything and trying to figure out what I needed to do, because that's our gut instinct all the time, right? When we need to fix things, when we need to heal, when we need to go further, we say, what do I have to do? What do I have to kind of add to the list, or what do I have to figure out? And in that moment of, do I get a job now that I have one fewer person to take care of? What do I need to do here? And there was this voice inside me that said, take a moment, take a breather. You deserve to heal. Take a moment, Lisa. It's okay. You don't have to rush to the next thing. And I'm so grateful that I listened to that voice, because in that voice, I also found this idea that I need to clear a path, physically. And you've talked about this. One of the first episodes that I listened to on your podcast, I was drawn to it immediately. You and I have the clutter thing, right? That connected. Episode 83, your approach to clutter, it's right on. And I had this moment where I said, okay, I need to clear a path, physically. There was so much that I had to let go of when I was in that survival mode, and I needed to clear a path, open up space, take stock. And then also when you're decluttering things like that, that gives you an opportunity to process and to grieve and to just figure out where you're at. And I'm so grateful that I took that time, because it then put me on the path to helping others declutter their lives and organize and just take time to process and not just constantly be going and filling. Now it's been many years and many lessons, like you said, but it was that I was so broken that I couldn't hustle or grind.
Yeah.
That taught me, well, okay, if you get to that point, and that can happen to any one of us at any moment, why are we doing it this way? That system is inherently broken, just like I was. Yeah. What if there's a better way? And that question has led me to where I am today.
So many things. So first of all, I'm so sorry about your mom. And I personally have somebody in my life right now. I'm not the caretaker, but watching her caretaker and how he's just dedicated everything he's got to taking care of her, and specifically Alzheimer's. What that looks like is just so difficult for everybody. I'm so sorry you went through that and that your mom went through that. But also, I can't even imagine trying to find anything productive while you're so stuck in, all of these different roles that are, you can't let go of any. And we find ourselves in those positions a lot in our lives. Best case scenario, we get to choose how we spend our time and what projects we're dedicating our time to and what our focus is. But quite often, you get thrown into these situations. So I love that you found something positive from it. On our best day, what does productivity feel like?
I feel like it's doing the right thing at the right time, the right way for you, right? It's a very specific, very personal thing. You lay your head on the pillow at night, feeling good about what you did, feeling satisfied, feeling like you've moved the needle forward, something you mentioned before, and it feels like such a discouraging concept, but I think that the more that we lean into it, the more open we are to letting go of the burnout path, is this idea that the list never ends.
Yeah.
It just doesn't, right? It doesn't. I think Simon Sinek kind of intimated this in, he start with why is what he started with, and then he wrote The Infinite Game, right? Where there's no goalpost. You don't just, you go to this point and you stop. Well, that's exactly the same for us with our to-do lists. And not the least of which is if we're multi-passionate, which is, I work with a lot of
That's
people,
my
right?
next question.
Yes.
What do you do with that? Because it's like, sure, in one space, I got a lot done today. But in the back of my head, I also have I'm working on finishing my first book. My second book is also like, hi, I'm right here.
Yes.
I'm ready.
Hello,
like, when are we doing
Kendra.
this? And yeah. And then like, oh, but I also want to help my husband redo his man room. And like, there's so many. How do you handle that? Where do you put it all?
Yeah, exactly. And so that's part of the question. Now, some of it, those answers are not answers you always want to hear, that you can't do it all and that if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. But those are those lessons learned where it's like, if you want to keep moving the needle forward, if you want to keep making progress, if you want to have those satisfying moments, it's understanding how you play with this puzzle that has moving parts and how you honor what you need, how you lean into what you love, but understand that something has to be the priority right now. What is it going to be? But the fun thing is, and this is exactly what I do as a coach, is playing with how you can touch upon or connect or honor each of those things, especially when it does come from passion, not just obligation, right? How you can kind of connect to each of those things in different ways that doesn't necessarily drain your energy or your capacity.
What do you describe that more? What do you mean?
So, for example, I have a framework, and this starts with your to-do list and getting your real to-do list. And that has to do with what do you have the capacity for currently? You think about your current time and space as like that prime real estate. What are you doing right now? But there are ways in which you can touch upon new ideas and new concepts where you're not fully invested in them. So for example, you have ideas that you love to have. And I am willing to bet, even though I just met you, that you're someone who can sit down and journal and have
that's
20 ideas in
5
5 minutes, right? And then suddenly the bright, shiny objects are like, woo, hello, and they're taking you away. So some of it is having like a scope and a boundary. And it's a very important boundary where you allow yourself to dream, but you also give yourself permission not to do anything about that dreaming right in that moment. And you set it to the side, let's say 2 weeks from now, that you're going to go through that list of things you dreamt about, right? Or that you journaled about in those moments. You had these great ideas. And so you get the satisfaction in this moment of 5 or 10 minutes, which doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take away from all the things you have to do right now, but you get that satisfaction of, I'm going to go on Pinterest and I'm going to write down all these ideas and I'm going to spitball and brainstorm and I'm mind mapping like you can't even believe, whatever makes you happy in that moment. But the boundary is, okay, and now the timer's off and now I'm done. I'm going to tuck it away, but I'm not losing it because I have a system in place where in 2 weeks or a month or whatever, I'm going to look at it again and I get to review it and say, ooh, what am I going to do with this? Where are these things going? And giving yourself full permission to, one, not do a damn thing with them. Sometimes it's like trying on clothes, right? And you're like, ooh, this is pretty, but when am I ever going to wear this?
Right.
Yeah, I'm not getting it, But it was that experience. You mentioned this in the decluttering episode, which I really loved. It's one of my favorite ways to kind of allow something to move on is to say, this was great in the moment. It meant a lot to me for this time in my life, this season in my life, or even in the moment. I've let go of clothing with the tags still on. My mom, who's since passed on, she liked to go shopping with me and she would pick out things and I would she called it the Elvis face. I would just be like, that's awful. But sometimes she would find me something really kind of cool, or sometimes I'd be like, all right, I'll try it. Let's go for it. And then it might stay in my closet with the tags on. And I had to say, you know what? The purpose of that piece was that moment for us where we were together and we shopped and we had fun. And I didn't really wear it, and I'm definitely not going to wear it now. I acknowledge it. I thank it. Let me bless someone else with it. So that same idea with your cool ideas about 10 other businesses that you just thought about yesterday, right?
Right.
It's letting yourself dream those and understanding that they can be a not now. And they also might be a not never, but You're allowing them to just breathe and just be. So it's
Right.
playing with that where it's a sliding scale. Sometimes it's you get to make a list, but you're not doing anything with it. Sometimes it's you get to research about something, but you put a cap on how long you get to research so you don't get into analysis paralysis, so you don't take yourself away from your current duties. It's kind of playing with tapping into the places that energize you and make you happy.
So you're kind of talking about a framework you have. Does your day look like? How do you go through, morning? Is there a routine that you typically follow? These lists, the framework, how does that work into your own life?
So,
If we want to use that as an example.
yeah, so stepping back though, a couple things. When I work with someone, we're talking about who you are as a person, right? Are you freewheeling? Are you so Gretchen Rubin has 4 tendencies. I don't know if you're familiar with those, but so you have the rebel, the obliger, the upholder, and the questioner. And we won't dive too deep into those, but it's pretty cool to look these up because they track back to how you show up to do things or what's kind of going to drive you to do things. I'm a questioner, so that means it's internal. Like if something makes sense to me and I have the data I need, move out of my way. I'm going to make it happen.
Right.
Whereas a
I'm gonna have
rebel,
to look it up and see what I am.
yeah. Oh, please do. I have a workbook with all of the different assessments that I use for my clients and links to those, and they're all free, which is great. You can do paid versions if you want, but I never want somebody locked into that. And so there's the 4 tendencies. So if you have a rebel is like, you can't make me and I can't make me. Well, that rebel desires something that is like a lot of freedom and a lot of purpose and movement in their schedule. So first things first, my schedule will look different from yours because it needs to match up with my personality and my strengths and my tendencies so that I don't have a lot of friction where it's like I'm trying to do something that just does not work for me. So for me, I'm a questioner. It needs to make sense to me. I do need some flexibility because I'm a mom of teens and there's a lot going on. I do plan out the week. I have locked in things in my color-coded calendar, which I laugh
Paper
at.
or digital?
I use digital, and I went to that a long time ago because I have multiple calendars. I have a business. I have the personal family calendar that we all share. And then we started adding calendars. For example, my son has a rock band and he started booking gigs. And so we need to be able
Me
to.
too.
Very cool. I love that.
We're like the same person.
I know.
We're living adjacent lives.
I am loving this, actually. So parallel lives here.
Yeah.
So we had another calendar that we had to add on, and we need to be able to overlap and to be able to see those all so we don't have any conflicts. But so I have the digital. And it took me a while to go from the paper. So now the paper part of it is the processing part where I look at the calendar, I figure out what's going on. I take time to make notes on how I want to fill in the spaces in between to move forward on projects, what I need to do. I need to work on a podcast episode. I'm guesting on an episode. What am I doing this week? Where do I want to go? And how do I want the week to look? I also tend to do really simple, overarching, flexible things like theme days. So now, interestingly,
What does that look like?
Yeah. So for example, Mondays and Wednesdays tend to be a lot of coaching. Thursdays tend to be podcasting and guesting as much as possible. Fridays tend to be administrative and a little flexible. Fun fact, Tuesdays tend to be my self-care day. However, sometimes you have an exception and there's like something available where you need to book a time, like I am recording with you on a Tuesday. But when I consider how much I love to podcast, how much I love to guest and have these conversations, I could almost argue the point. But the whole idea of boundaries is to create your rules so that you have consistency. And then when you break them, it's not chaos. It's an exception to the rule.
And it's intentional.
And it's not a problem. And then a lot of times, like if I need to change up something on a particular Tuesday for a week, I may actually take more time. And I did this actually Monday. Yesterday, I took a little bit more self-care downtime for me. So I just make adjustments accordingly.
Do you look at a week at a time, a day at a time, a month at a time, or some combination of that?
So in terms of overarching planning and bigger picture, I like to go quarterly. Life moves too fast for me to go yearly. I mean, it's not that I'm not booking
Yeah.
things out a year in advance for some things, especially personal, right? Like I know when
Right.
my son is
Vacations.
graduating college and vacations and things like that. And there's a seasonal aspect to it. So for big picture planning, it would be quarterly, but honestly, week to week, or I may look ahead to 2 weeks to be like, what's the sort of pattern and the energy and the demand, which I think is especially important. For example, if I'm looking at the next 2 weeks, or we have holidays coming up, or if you just said to me, you're like, I have so many podcast recordings this week. And so I try to think of how I can keep the balance with that. So if I realize I'm actually recording as a guest with 3 podcasts this week, I love this, but that's also my max because I give a lot and I'm also doing my own podcast and that's enough for 1 week. So having looked ahead, I make sure that when I go to schedule more, I won't be adding more. So I may look ahead for 2 weeks, but week to week is when I really do that, the more minutia planning where I have the basics. You've got anchor points, appointments, things like that are locked into your calendar. And then you figure out where you're going to fill in that middle ground, the project related kinds of things. And I'm lucky that I have the flexibility to do that. But the concept is still there. You may have to modify it depending upon your schedule, but it's a lot of times people are like, okay, I'm booked from, 9 to 2, or I'm booked from 11 to 4 or whatever. And then it's like, what am I doing between 5 and 8? And what do I want to be doing? And how do I combine those elements? And I think it's all a sliding scale of where your values are and where your needs are.
I also feel like it shifts throughout the year.
Absolutely.
Depending on the season.
Yep.
I also tend to have less energy. Like in the winter, I want to hibernate and go a little slower versus like the summer. And even the summer, I just don't want to work as much.
You want to play in the summer
beach.
and you want to hibernate in the winter, especially if you live in our area. And then our friends in Australia are like going through the opposite. But either way, you're absolutely right. There's such a seasonality in our lives, right? In terms of what we're going through and our health shifts. And then there's also seasonal for the year itself. So thinking about that, that's where planning quarterly kind of comes in. And thinking about like, this is why, I tend to be, I'm the odd one out when everyone's like, it's December, it's the end of the year, let's push. And I'm like, let's not.
I know. Well, I set a deadline of my book being finalized in December, and just thinking now or looking at it now, bad planning, because I don't want to do any of it. I want to put Christmas decorations up with my kids and make cookies and now I'm like, all right, well, I never work at night. And now I'm finding like, okay, I do need to just schedule a few nights where I can just tunnel vision, and because I'm in editing right now. It's one of those things that, unlike my day-to-day tasks, my main company is marketing. So, those kinds of things I can set time for and, jump in and out of projects and work with different clients, and it's easy to switch. But with this, it's like you have to just be in it and like really dedicate a good chunk of time. So I'm sure you find that too, right? Like if somebody's working on a certain type of project, it's definitely going to take a different focus or amount of time.
Absolutely. I've coached authors before, so we've gone through very specific needs. And so in your situation, so this is definitely and what did we learn? So thinking, with the seasonal thing, like, okay, next book, because we know there's going to be a next book, Kendra, let's not pretend, right? Then you'll adjust accordingly. So it gets better and better each time. We learn things, we grow, it's continuous improvement. In the meantime, you're in a situation where you're like, okay, I need to sprint a little bit more. But this is not a forever thing. It's a short-term thing. And you're right. In this case, it would be finding time in the evening. So what you want to get into is what's referred to as a flow state. And that's that hyper-concentrated focus state. And the good news is when you do that, you are more productive than ever. And that's the beautiful thing. It doesn't have to be this constant slog and every single night. One of my clients that I worked with, she had been trying to write this book. Mama, business owner, the works. And she had been working on it for years and really struggling. We worked together. We set up a whole ritual to put her in a flow state to figure out what it meant, what she needed to be doing during these sessions. And within 1 calendar year, she had her book written.
Amazing.
So
Can you go into flow state a little bit more? Because I don't know that
absolutely.
everyone knows, or even flow state, but then the different types of workflow. Like I was just saying with the small, I guess, Pomodoro, where you're doing small bits versus like the larger flowy types of work.
So for me, and I guess this is a matter of perspective. So I'm not so sure if I agree that Pomodoro is necessarily flow state, because I feel that flow state technically lasts longer. But Pomodoro is a
Right.
concentrated focus state where you're reducing distractions. And it's the kind of thing that could be a jumping off point, or you could use elements of it to get you into flow state. But the idea of flow state, I think people forget because they think go with the flow and they think it could be very easy. And some elements of it are in that it's the things that you love to do and you lose track of time. But what people miss about it sometimes is that it can be very difficult and challenging work. It's like you're engaged, but it's this sort of like this awareness where you're using massive amounts of your brain and you're like
Yes.
awake, but it's not that a taxing kind of way. It's a like super engaged, like, yes, I am in it. And because you're in that state, that's how you lose track of time.
Right.
So
Right.
you can kind of go back and reverse engineer instances where you're like, whoa, I blocked out the world, completely lost track of time, and like, look at all that I got done. And this could be organizing, it could be painting a room, it could be painting a mural, it could be writing a book, it could be so many different things. It can be applied to so many different things. But that idea of getting the distractions away, getting your mind engaged in the moment, understanding what needs to be done. And I think the most important thing, and this is a concept for productivity in general, that comes from compassion and calming the nervous system and all the things that we love to talk about, is this idea that when you get yourself to be fully present, you will be incredibly productive.
That's true. I used to. I still do sometimes. I try not to. I think I could multitask. I cannot multitask. I can't do anything well if I'm doing 3 things at once. They all suffer. So it is, I feel like it is a presence thing where if I'm really in the thing I'm doing at the moment, even if I'm working in small sprints, not in a big flow state. I feel like flow state's great for big brain stuff where you really have to think, and where the smaller little bite-sized tasks you can get away with, I'm going to spend 15 minutes on this, I'm going to spend 10 minutes on that, I'm going to get to a half hour there.
Yeah. And the smaller bite-sized stuff can also be good for what we consider to be the multitasking. So the multitasking
Right.
is truly debunked in that really what's happening, and that so many of us who are like so good at so many things have like confused people out there. It really is ultimately, no matter what, you cannot focus on, you cannot do 2 things at once. I don't care how impressive you are, super mama time. It's not cognitively possible. So what we're talking about with multitasking is really just super fast and efficient task switching.
Yes.
That's the thing. And now there are many instances where that kind of task switching is doable, or sort of tethering tasks together where you almost don't feel like you're switching back and forth because they're so automatic, like driving to the store that you've driven to a ton of times and you're so used to all of those processes and what you're doing, or folding laundry and then at the same time listening to music or listening to a podcast
Right.
or whatever. Those things are locked in. But I've also, I don't know if you found this yourself, where I'll be folding laundry and then I'll listen to something and be like, oh man, that was good. What was that? And then I'm like, I have to stop everything I'm doing and then rewind and then listen again. And then, yeah, so it's that kind of like focus that that's different. So yeah, there are ways that we can tether things together and be more efficient with our time. But in the end, yeah, the task switching when you need, the big brain stuff, nope,
Yeah.
that's not
No,
happening.
absolutely not. Even like having too many tabs open on my computer, I have to not do that. I'll open a whole nother browser window just to have what I need to, because I am shiny object girl
Mm-hmm.
and I will see something and I'm like, oh, right, I have to do that. Oh, right. But then I'm waiting for this to process. So I'll go over here. And then before I know it, I am like spaghetti brained. Don't even know where I am. And the 4 things that I needed to get done are but maybe 2% of each of them are done. And that's it. And I'm like, what happened? Not productive, not happy. When you have a client that comes to you and has maybe, multi-passionate, let's say, and a creative. Let's say it's me, right? Let's use me as an example. I also find that like I have to honor, and maybe this is just an excuse, but I have to honor like where my mood's at and my energy's at that day.
Absolutely.
So,
No, I'm with you on that. Don't you worry.
right?
I got you.
I'm like, no, I'm making excuses. But I feel like there's some days where I'm like, okay, I had this plan. I have to scrap it and look at what feels good to me today, work it into my week somehow so that I can still hit whatever deadlines I needed to hit. But how have you seen people, how have you guided them through that? Because I feel like that is a concept that like from corporate America, they're like, oh, I don't care how you feel today. You're going to get this all done no matter what.
Exactly. I don't care how you feel today. I have been working so hard to fight the good fight on that. And I get that we still have the things where we're like, well, there's still going to be suck it up, buttercup kind of
Right.
moments. I get it. We have responsibilities and there are things that we need to do. But what I'm trying to encourage is that there are so many aspects of what we do that we do have some choice within there, or we do have some ways to tweak. I want to encourage you that, yes, I'm a mood reader, for example, and giving yourself full permission to go with that mood can work, provided you have a good system in place for that flexibility. And I want to back up for a moment, and that I swear when you were describing this, you're going to bring up ADHD because that's a big part of it too. And in the Venn diagram
I don't
of
know
life,
what you're talking about.
I'm sorry. Who said that? Who said that? Some of my love languages in life involve, coffee at any given point in time.
Yeah, I see your sign.
Yes, really, really good books, a lot of music, and Venn diagrams. I love me some Venn diagrams. And so in the Venn diagram of people in my world, things that I am, people I coach, there's the multi-passionate, the creative, the ADHD, and all of that. So given that, we're going to take it back to what I mentioned before, which is the shame-free, right? So shame-free productivity means if you wake up in a mood, and sometimes we're like, well, where did that mood come from? We're acting like we're just being bratty kids. Well,
Right.
sometimes bratty, and we're going to use air quotes here, bratty kids come from the fact that they didn't get enough sleep last night, or they haven't been given a snack. Maybe that's just me. But
They're hangry.
my husband, you never see him move so fast as when he realizes I'm angry. But the point is that being curious, right? Asking the why, asking the so, getting down to those next levels. Where did it come from?
Mm.
Maybe you're meant.
I had one of
right?
those days yesterday.
Okay.
And I did kind of dive into that. It was funny because I was asking myself, yes, my daughter later, and she's like, oh, you're nuts. I felt like I wanted to sit in it for a minute. And I guess what I came to is like, because we also have a culture of like, just be happy and like lean into the light and
Toxic positivity much? Okay.
Exactly. I was like, no, I really want to like feel this. And why do I really want to feel this? And I was like, oh, if I don't feel this, if I don't sit in it for a minute and like really think about where does it come from? Why am I feeling like this? I'm just going to push it to the side and I'm going to have like the like shadow of that ick feeling and not really have a root cause for it. Well, the root cause was it was a Monday after a holiday weekend.
Yes.
And I was tired and, just kind of transitioning is difficult sometimes. So that's where it was all coming from. It wasn't like, oh my God, I'm like falling into a depression or, it was just simply that. So, I I think what you're saying is so true. Like really understanding why you're feeling like that and not just trying to push past it is important.
And so acknowledging that and then building it into the systems. So for example, now we bring in that's the whole idea of we do something intentionally. It changes the game for us because it gives us the space to breathe, to prepare, to re-energize, to heal, to do whatever it is we need to do, is taking a look at your calendar and in the future, and there's more coming up, so you have an opportunity to do this, where you look at the Monday after a holiday and you change how you approach that. I have episodes about so many of these things that we're talking about where I talk about like transitions, and we have to think about ramping up and ramping down. And so as you go
Yeah.
into like a holiday break or something like that, you're ramping down. And I know that our instincts are, I got to cram as much as possible before, and then I got to jump back in guns ablazing because, I have to do this and I've missed so much time. And we have to change that mindset because more than likely we're not going to get done what we think we're going to get done anyhow. And now we just felt really awful about it.
Right. There comes that shame.
Yep. The shame and the
Yeah.
guilt. And then we weren't that productive anyhow. Whereas if we intentionally create more space, this is the whole life decluttering idea, right? Of saying, okay, when I look at my schedule and it's the Monday after a holiday, I know I'm going to be tired. So I'm going to allow myself a little more journaling or maybe a little easier task. Like, what do I need to do? I'm definitely going to do a mind sweep and kind of like go over all the things that are on my brain. I'm going to review my calendar and I'm going to do some things that are, just a little slower, a little easier to ease into my schedule again, and then this way you avoid that problem, that ick, that there's a thing in productivity where if you have too big or too problematic of a step to do the thing, it's referred to as friction, right? So you're trying to reduce the friction. And sometimes reducing the friction is, you make things easier because like I have task management systems where it's easy to pull up on any device and I can just toss something into the inbox. And so that reduces the friction. So I keep track of things easier. Sometimes reducing the friction is reducing your friction because you're honoring your energy levels and trusting that maybe saying, okay, it goes back to what you said in the very beginning of our conversation, that maybe that rest that you think isn't productive is exactly what you need right now so that when you go back to it, whatever that project was that you have to get done, you do get into flow state and you make it happen. And suddenly you're like, everybody get out of my way because I'm a house of
Yeah.
fire now.
I feel like there's a big part of productivity that stems from being inspired. So uh, I try to, I mean, on a small scale, I'll go walk. I love my woods. It's just absolutely beautiful. But on a larger scale, like going to museums, like doing things that just make me feel lit up and creative. And then I can get back into, writing or whatever it is with like this whole renewed energy. And I feel like my cup is full. And I think that's something that we all have to make sure we're remembering. And whether it's part of your self-care or whatever you want to call it, that idea that we need to be inspired and that you can create that and not wait for it at least helps me tremendously with being productive.
Love that. And I love the idea of like the museum to inspire you, or just like, to me, that's something that's like soul filling, right? It's
Yeah,
touching upon
yeah.
different
Music,
areas, right? Music. Yes. 100%. It's like
concerts. Yeah,
concerts or just going and playing with my family or playing with our band or whatever. Those things like elevate you. And I mean, it's emotional, it's mental, it's a challenge. It helps you step away from whatever you are working on. So it's like a
it's
mental break.
divine.
It is absolutely joyful. Noise is also, I mean, it's like ways to like stimulate and care for your vagus nerve. It's like scientific, it's like all of the good things. There's like so many things going on that's really brilliant. But what you're touching upon, whether you're talking about like being cognizant of your mood for the day and what you can do and being curious as to what it is, asking yourself what you need, or thinking about how you can be inspired. All those things are this idea of energy management. We talk so much about time management, but it's really what you do with your time. And I've talked about self-management and priority management, but really your energy. And I use the example of the kids like, oh, I don't have the energy to clean my room, which is pretty much their, but, their constant mantra, their default
Yeah.
setting. But the minute it's like, hey, you wanted to go out with your friends. So it's like,
Right.
oh, your room's already clean. Okay, that might be more motivation than energy. But the
Right.
point is, there's different things that we have, different rewards and different things that light us up. And when we do that, we often think that we have to. Now, that's a direction of, okay, do the thing and then you get to go have the fun. But what you're talking about is sometimes you need to have the fun and then do the thing. I had a client where he
Right.
was missing he was artist and a musician, and he was missing out on that, but feeling like, but I'm not getting my stuff done. And I said, no, the rule now is you're going to take 10 minutes before you work on your projects to doodle something or to play your guitar. And you're going to take that time to prime your productivity.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a good term,
Yeah.
priming your productivity, because that's what it is. I also don't want to forget, because you just said, I talk a lot about motivation and inspiration and motivation together, where like you're inspired to do something, but then the motivation really is something that you kind of have to create yourself. I feel like people wait for inspiration to do something, like especially if it's a creative thing. But if you're doing that as a job, if that's your career, you can't wait for, this divine inspiration to hit you. You have to create that. So, creating the motivation to do something, to create, to write, to work, whatever it is, I think comes from these systems, things that you have in place so that it gives you the energy to do the thing that you need to do.
And it comes from doing, right? It's like the whole idea of you can't
Yes.
steer a parked car, right?
Gotta take
You
action.
need to be moving. And by the way, bonus points, taking action is the best way to reduce anxiety. So when you're in that
Yes.
overthinking mode and you don't know what you're doing, whatever, you take the action. That's going to reduce the anxiety, and it's going to, then you start to course correct. It's okay to take action and then just be like, and that's not the direction I want to go in. Well, now we know that, like, and then you adjust.
That's great information.
Yeah.
Or like
Fabulous
the
feedback.
thing, my husband suffers from anxiety, like a lot.
Yeah.
And so many times I'm like, what is the thing that's weighing on you the most? And he's like, oh, I have to do this. And I'm like, so just go do it. It's that concept of eat the frog, that thing that you keep putting it off because either it's hard or it's heavy or you just don't want to do it. Just freaking do it. And then all of a sudden, like everything opens up for you.
Yeah. Many times we've made it more than it is.
Exactly.
But even if that's not the case, taking that action will help because it gives you the feedback that you need. It does reduce the anxiety, and then it does something so incredibly important that we always need no matter what, which is build momentum. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I think we tend, or maybe I'm getting this, I grew up in the 90s and I remember watching Working Girl. Do you remember that movie?
Love that movie.
But it was like hustle, grind, like that was it. Like you had to,
Hit the pavement, man. You got to have the sneakers and walk.
And your shoulder pads.
Oh, God, yeah.
And so I think I grew up with that mindset of like, this is what this looks like when you're in a career, when you're, if you want to grow, you have to pay your dues. And I've seen over the length of my career that when I've set boundaries about my time and I'm honest about that with other people that maybe haven't quite gotten there yet, it is like majorly frowned upon. Like they wear their busyness and their grinding as a badge of honor.
Yeah,
I look at it, I'm like, what are you doing? That sucks.
I call it the busy badge of honor. And to this day, busy is like a bad word for me. And people will be like, you're so busy. And I'm like, I don't like using that word. We'll call it an active period of my life at the moment, because it's true. We can be busy, but I think it's the busy without intention and the constant movement that is either because you feel like that's the only thing you can do, because you aren't allowed to pause, because you're hiding from something. Me being busy is a form of life clutter.
Yeah. And distraction.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. Busy feels very messy, where, productive is obviously a lot more organized and better word. And I feel like at the end of the day, if I was like, oh, I was so busy, it is a negative thing. I didn't get anything I wanted to get done.
Right.
Versus,
Well, it's like
I
the
was
wheel
super
spinning,
productive.
but were you
Yes.
engaged, right? It's like, woo, there was like, but nothing kind of locked in and helped you move forward. So I think that's the distinction. But you're right. There is definitely the mindset out there. So those who haven't gotten to this point yet, I understand that because I've been there and it feels uncomfortable for them. It could feel uncomfortable for them because that's just not the reality for them. And they still feel superior for being busy.
Yeah.
Or it could be that they're like, that's tapping into something that I'm not ready to hear yet.
Right,
But
right. Yeah, I
yeah,
don't take calls after 3 p.m. anymore.
yeah.
I never work a weekend. I never work at night unless, it's a personal project like this.
Right. And that's your choice. But that's that great example. You've got these boundaries, but then that's an exception to the rule. That's short
Right.
term. It's a sprint to get something done. And also, you may not do that again because you may adjust your time frame and the project management. You may adjust the details of that in the future
Yeah.
so that this doesn't happen again. It's all good. We're not doing this perfectly,
No.
but we're learning and we're growing and we're understanding there is a better way. So I love those things for you.
Yeah, I mean, because I've also realized over the years that I do better doing different types of tasks different times of the day. So like after 3 p.m., that's when I'm much more productive around the house, with the kids, like even cooking or meal planning, like my brain is better there. I can't think about those things in the morning. The morning is good for me, like to do big brain stuff. I usually start by meditating or journaling on my best days and then going into like real big client work or project work. Whereas at the end of the day, it's a lot lighter lift. There's nothing that heavy.
Our brains also react differently where our productivity comes from. The reason that batch processing can be so popular, right? Doing the same type of work at the same time is because we're in that particular type of focus mode or that type of energy. So I know for me in the afternoon, I would pick up the kids and then they'd come home and I'd be helping them sort of transition out of school. And then at that
Yeah.
point, there's, dinner preparation. And I mean, I'm not always the one doing that. It's not completely traditional here, but at the same time, now would be, or during that time, I should say, it's easier for my brain to say, there's something personal I need to be doing in the house, or there's a project there, as opposed to trying to run back out to my office, do a work thing, and then run. That's splitting the types of tasks. That's crazy making, and that makes you that's the sort of the busy thing, right? It's not as
Yeah.
efficient. So yeah, it's all of these different things that we're talking about. You're talking about energy. You're talking about like what kinds of tasks happen at the same time, where your energy is during the day. All of these.
I love your theme days. I'm definitely gonna start implementing that.
It's also handy
'Cause I don't.
for future like appointments. So for example, the things that to me relate to self-care, medical appointments, things like that, when I'm standing there. So it's because a lot of these things, boundaries, we talk about this to protect ourselves, but it can also reduce our decision fatigue, right? And so if
Yeah.
I'm standing there at the dentist's office and they're like, well, when do you want to come back in 6 months? And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing in 6 hours. Like, what do you want from me? No, it's actually a lot easier to say, well, what do you have on a Tuesday?
That's so smart.
Right?
What about location? So I find that sometimes if I need to get something done, invoicing, I hate invoicing. I will go to Starbucks or Barnes and Noble and kind of sit in, an uncomfortable chair because it makes me focus and I want to get it done as quickly as possible. And I get a little caffeinated. Do you find the same thing that like changing your location can help you be more productive?
Oh, I love that actually. So what you're doing is you're kind of being sensitive to changing up how your brain is focusing and cueing it in a different way. So our environment, I've actually used this in terms of talking about organizing our environment, but I say that it affects and reflects our mental state. So if you are finding that the same environment where you usually focus, you're struggling to do a particular task, and it's not the environment itself, then you're like, oh, it's the task. Then it's finding something that will, maybe it is kind of a motivation. I actually love that idea. Now, what I find interesting is the description you're using is to sit there in an uncomfortable chair and just be like, just get it done already. Come on, Kendra, you can do this. Whereas for me, I would be like, I cannot stand this task. So what I'm going to do is skip the desk. I'm going to have this one task, like sort of a mobile office kind of vibe. So I'm with you there, but I'm going to go to the couch with a comfy blanket and a warm bevy and maybe like turn on a show I've watched a bajillion times. So I'm not really focusing on it, but so it's that kind of thing where I'm like, or putting on some music I love or whatever. It's sort of like creating a warm and cozy environment, which I know sounds like the antithesis of productivity, but cozy
No, I can
can
see how that
actually
works too.
really be wonderful. Cozy can be fabulous for writing sessions, creating a
Oh, yeah.
ritual where you have like, candles burning and
Yeah.
you have task lighting, but it's very specific. You want to think about the
And
color of your lighting, and you want to
a
think.
locked door.
You'll notice behind, yes, locked door. Love that. You'll notice I have twinkle lights behind me.
Oh, yeah.
I do that a lot. As soon as the season kind of turns, it's not even holiday specific, it's just sort of lighting specific. I do
Yes.
that to create a coziness in my office because it calms my nervous system, and I'm going to focus better when I do that.
Yeah.
So
Lighting is huge. Smells for me too. I'll burn incense for different things, candles, even like wearing certain perfumes just sort of changes things for me.
yeah. And so it cues
All
your
those
body
senses.
and in your mind, yeah, because in so many different ways to say, this is what we're working on now, this is what we're doing. And especially if you are in a space that's multi-use. Like, for
Right.
example, the ritual idea, one of the authors I'm thinking of, we really focused on the ritual a lot because she works her business in the same space. So it was like, how do you change from business mode where you're like, well, let me just check this one email, to no, I'm
Right.
in writer mode now. What do I have to
Yeah.
do to change the environment to create the starting point where, the candle goes on and maybe music, or when I say music, it could be music or could be like sounds, that
Yeah,
aren't
like binaural beats. I
exactly,
love.
whatever it
Yeah.
has to be that, again, all that helps you into the flow state, but it also triggers your mind to say, wait, this is not the same environment as when I'm working on my business. It's like that shift. It's really important.
Yeah. I love writing at Barnes& and Noble because it just makes me feel like, oh, I'm amongst other authors.
It's such book energy. I
Or the
love it.
library.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
All right. So how can people work with you? How do you work with people? We'll have all your links in the show notes too, but where's the starting point?
Absolutely. And thank you for asking. So, the hub where you find me and all the different places that I am, positivelyproductive.com. And you are listening to an amazing podcast here. I'd be honored if you'd come pop over to mine, and it's Positively Living, Shame-Free Productivity Conversations. And so many of the topics we talked about today are absolutely touched upon there. And as far as how I work with people, it is one-on-one at this point. I haven't gone to group work, but I am currently working on more ways to help people DIY and continue to explore the very things that we're talking about here, like kind of doing these assessments and then kind of taking that next step to say, ooh, what does this mean for me? How can I start making small adjustments on my own? And then I have quick one-on-one sessions where it can be a very low risk, easy way to do exactly what we did, have a conversation and say, ooh, did you consider this? Let's try a few things and just turn stuff around. And if you're curious what that even is like, I actually have those episodes on my podcast as well. I do strategy calls that I record and put on my podcast so people can hear what it's like.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, and I definitely encourage you guys to go check out Lisa's links. I'm definitely going to go and figure out what was that? Not a personality type,
The
but what
four
was it called?
tendencies.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm going to go figure that. I have a feeling I'm the rebel, but we'll see. I bulk consistency and, it's if every day was the same, I would just, I think, shrivel up and die. But, some things need to be consistent, but yeah, the same thing over and over and over. I love things that change. That keeps me energized and happy and all those things. But I cannot thank you enough for coming on the show. And I have one other thing. So we have a lift kit. So like yesterday, I was not feeling great. I was like, how do I bring myself out of that? I was doing some journaling that helps, but we have a whole toolkit that we call a lift kit, and they're full of little things that you could do. We had a tapping person on, and she had a little tapping exercise that you can do to kind of bring yourself out of that. They're very low effort, easy 5-10 minute things that you can do to lift and shift your mood. Do you have anything from a productivity standpoint that you could offer that we can add to our digital lift kit?
I have multiple things, and I'm kind of torn because usually I say the guided mind sweep, which is very practical. It's I actually have an audio guiding you through clearing your brain and doing a mental declutter. But when you say lift, I'm more inclined to go toward a workbook that's in my positively productive toolkit, and it's
Okay.
called the Joy List, and it'll take like
Ooh,
5 minutes. It's so quick, but it's basically a set of questions to answer. So you grab yourself your favorite bevy and you just sit down and lock a door and then just answer the questions. And it'll help you understand what lights you up, what makes you happy. So just the process itself will lift you up. It'll remind you of things that you've forgotten about that make you happy. And then it becomes a practical way to kind of fit in that self-care that we forget about or we think we don't have time for. And we realize, oh, but that was something on my joy list. I could certainly sneak that in there. And it becomes an energy management tool, a self-care guide, and so many good things. So I think
I love
that needs
that.
to be part of your lift kit.
All right, we're going to add the joy list. We'll attribute it to you. Thank you so much. That I think is going to be a great tool. I'll definitely try it myself too.
Love it. Thank you, Kendra.
Thank you for being on the show. You're officially a unicorn, Lisa.
Yes, I love it.
All right, we will catch up soon. And everybody, like I said, go check out Lisa's website. And thank you for being here today and giving me your time and energy.
Thank you for inviting me. It was my pleasure.